That's embarrassing. My audio was off that whole time. Oh man. Welcome to the second tutorial from the Garage Recording Academy. We're just gonna wait for a second, see if we can get some more people into the video, and then we'll get right into the lesson. In the meantime, if anybody has questions about yesterday's video, the EQ for mastering video, you can post those in the live chat, and I'd be happy to answer those now while we wait a minute for anyone else. Alright, doesn't seem that we have any questions, so I think we're just going to jump right into the video here. Ready for a new lesson. Hey guys, I got another mastering tutorial for you today. Today we're going to cover mastering compression. But before we get into that, I just want to go over two things real quick. First, if after the last video, if you didn't get a chance to go and download my free Studio Client Interactions guide, you should go do that now. It's garagerecordingacademy.com. That'll help you get on your client's good side. It'll help you keep your clients in line when they're in your studio, get them to respect your equipment, your facility, everything. The second thing is I totally forgot to mention in the last video, and this is actually, it's terrible I did, because in the last video is when it's more important than this one. If you're not listening on your studio monitors, or at the very least a good set of headphones, not earbuds, like a good set of studio headphones, you really need to be doing that, especially on the last video, the EQ mastering. To hear those little tweaks in EQ, you really need to be listening on your monitors or on good studio headphones. Your phone speakers aren't going to cut it. Your computer speakers aren't going to cut it. Your earbuds are not going to cut it. If you really want to hear the subtle differences, you need to be listening on good speakers or headphones. All right, now we're going to jump right into this. We're going to start where we left off. We're going to highlight that same chorus so we can loop that. And we're going to jump into the mastering compression. Now, I'll go over the settings I have here, but the settings I have here, actually, the first time that I mastered this, the master that I actually put out, that was this one. And what we did with that, the reason there's less plugins on that there, because what I did is I had a separate track for that, and I did this exact same EQ, but rather than route that through a regular compressor plugin, I actually sent it out into my outboard compressor, which is an Art Pro VLA Mark II. It's a great compressor. It's 2 channels of compression. You can run it as a stereo compressor. That's what I used to do the actual compression on the mastering. And so the reason you see that different here is the EQ, this track here, the EQ plugin was already printed on it because I sent it out into the compressor with the EQ. And then the outboard compressor was also printed onto this track. So I'll show you this at the end of this, what it sounds like with just this, with all the plugins turned off, so you can hear what that sounds like with that same EQ and compression. And then here, what I did was I mimicked the settings of my outboard compressor on here. Same ratio, same attack, same release. And then I kind of had to eyeball the threshold and the gain because they work differently than they do on the outboard one. Well, earball, not eyeball. But yeah, so I'll show you what it sounds like. I got it as close as I possibly could. I'll show you what this track with this EQ and compressor sounds like compared to this track, which already had the EQ and the outboard compressor on it. And obviously leaving the rest of the plugins off, but all these plugins are the same as these ones here. Anyway, let's get into it. So what I'm going to show you is, because compression's kind of one single thing overall, it's a lot of controls, but it's one single thing. I'm going to play the track, and I'm going to turn the compressor on and off, and you'll see what it does. And then I'll go over the controls. And I just want to reiterate, everything in mastering is going to be really subtle. This is a really subtle compression. It's a low ratio, and it's a slow attack and release, so that it's barely kissing the top of it. It may look like a lot here because, like I said, I was trying to mimic what the outboard compressor did with the threshold and gain, so it kind of looks like more than it really is. But you'll see what it does. Anyway, let's give it a listen. When you got So yeah, you can see there's clearly a difference, but it is actually pretty subtle. It sounds like a big difference because we have the EQ before it, but if we hadn't done that EQ, then the compression wouldn't sound very much different than the original track. But that's why we did the EQ before, so that we're compressing what has already been EQ'd, rather than compressing before the EQ and trying to EQ it after, because then we'd have to make even bigger moves on the EQ, which we don't want to do. If we do the EQ first, we get to do small little tweaks. Here, I'll go back to the EQ for a second so you can see, in case you didn't see the last video, just very small tweaks. The highest one we did was the shelf, which was 2.3 dB, but all the little boosts and cuts were less than 2 dB. Most of them were less than 1 dB variations. So, yeah. If we had put this after the compressor, we would have to be doing way more like 2.5 dB on all of these to make any differences. But that's why we did it before the compressor. So let's get into the compressor controls real quick. It's a 3.5 ratio. That's actually higher than I would normally do it if I was using an in-the-box compressor like this. Normally, if I was using an inboard compressor, then it would be I'd use a 2 to 1 ratio as opposed to 3.5 to 1. But with the outboard compressor, the 2 to 1 wasn't doing enough, so I turned it up to 3.5, which is actually still a very low ratio on that compressor. So, like I said, I was trying to mimic what I did on the outboard on this. I literally just copied these three controls. I wrote down what I had set them on the outboard compressor, as I usually do when I'm using outboard gear, so I can replicate it. So those are exact copies. So 3.5 ratio. Then we got a 25 millisecond attack. That's a pretty slow attack. The reason is because, like I said, we want to be barely kissing the top of the peaks. We want to let most of that sound through. We're just taking off the top end. And the release is longer just because we want to compress everything. We don't want the compressor kicking off really short. So slow attack and a slow release. Every track's going to be different. If it was a punchier track, you're probably going to want a slow attack and a faster release, but this track is pretty laid back overall, so we used a slow release. And then the gain, the gain and threshold, we're just trying to match what I had done on the outboard with this one. So just subtle controls. So, small ratio, you saw it on here. Mostly getting only like 3 to 4 decibels of gain reduction. All right, so now I'm going to show you the difference in sound. Like I said, I got the compressor as close as I could, and it's the exact same EQ. The only difference between these two tracks, all these plugins are the same. The only difference is this one used an outboard compressor in this stage, and this one used a plug-in compressor. So let's listen to what the first track sounded like. And then let's listen to what the first track sounded like. See, almost identical. Like I said, I was kind of guessing with the gain and the threshold. I was listening and getting it as close as I possibly could while listening. So, yeah, but that's mastering compression. Now, there are actually, it's going to get confusing. There's technically three almost, more types of compression we're going to get into. But this is where we start. Just a really small ratio, barely touching the track, just to get things leveled out. And then we can get into more specific issues. All right. Hope to see you at the next video. Again, go to garagerecordingacademy.com to download your free studio client interaction guide, and stick around. After this tutorial's ended, we're going to be doing a live Q&A for about 5, maybe 10 minutes, depending on how many people and questions there are. Hope you stick around. If not, I'll see you at the next video. So that was, yeah, just basic mastering compression. I see we got Don back in the chat. That's cool. Uh, if anybody has questions about mastering compression, now would be the time to ask. Just type them right into the chat there, and I'd be happy to answer them for you. And if not, then if you missed the video yesterday, go back and watch that. And please watch the video tomorrow, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to get into multi-band compression tomorrow. So that's going to be, that's something that's really confusing for a lot of people. So I think that'll be helpful. All right. I'm going to say one last call for any questions. Just type them right in the chat. Any questions about mastering compression? All right. Don is asking, are you automating any of the compression throughout the entire track of the song? No, I did not. In the mastering phase, I did not automate any compression. I did do a little automation of the compression in the mixing phase, but that's a completely different video. But for just mastering, no, none of the compression's automated. We're not doing any automation in the entire mastering process. It's all just straightforward. Now, again, that's just dependent on the track. Some tracks you will need it, and some spots definitely, like if you have a really big difference in just overall volume for the track, then you will need to automate it, especially if you want to make certain parts stick out. If you want a certain part of a track to be even quieter, if you want that specifically, then you can automate the compression off so that it drops it more. But for the most part, no, we're not automating any compression in the master. All right, any more questions? All right, I don't think there's going to be any more questions. So thank you guys for watching the video. Like I said, same time tomorrow, we'll be doing a tutorial on multi-band compression. So that'll be fun to get into. Hope to see you there. And if you could hit the subscribe button to this channel so you get notifications about when we put out new videos, and especially if we're doing more live videos. And if you could share this to just share it on any of your social media, specifically to any other friends you have that are into recording and stuff, that are trying to get started with a recording studio or even just home recording on their own. That'd be awesome. But yeah, thank you guys. Hope to see you tomorrow.